The worst hurricane of the year is currently forming in the Caribbean Sea, and this is about to bring the potential for catastrophic impacts to areas like Jamaica, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and the Bahamas. Additionally, severe weather will continue today and tomorrow across the United States, with more damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes being a possibility. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about Hurricane Melissa and the severe weather threat in the United States. We'll begin with what's happening right now in the Caribbean Sea, and this right here is Melissa, which is expected to intensify into at least a Category 4 hurricane tomorrow near Jamaica, but we do think that this is going to make a run at becoming a Category 5 hurricane. If this were to become a Category 5 hurricane, it would be our third Category 5 hurricane of the year so far. Luckily, the first two avoided most of land, but this one, unfortunately, is not going to do the same, because what's going to happen over the next few days is that Melissa will slowly track to the west, dumping upwards of 30 to 60 inches of rain in Jamaica, and then it will eventually turn off to the north, making landfall in Jamaica, going through Cuba and the Bahamas, causing the threat of catastrophic impacts over a elongated amount of time here. This is going to last all the way from today, all the way through at least Wednesday of next week, which is a very long period to be talking about all these impacts in such a localized area here in the Greater Antilles. On the other hand, we do have a big severe weather event that took place yesterday. We had a couple of unwarned tornadoes in North Texas, and on top of that, we've had just a slew of thunderstorms across Texas and Oklahoma over the last 24 hours. More of that is to come today, as we are expecting severe weather this morning along the Gulf Coast, and then later this afternoon there may even be some more severe weather in store, with tornadoes being a possibility. And here's a closer look at Melissa, which looks like a very impressive tropical system right now in the Caribbean Sea. We've had some very deep convection over the last 12 hours, really starting to center around its core circulation, which means that it is now rapidly organizing, and we are expecting this to become a major hurricane by as early as late tonight and early tomorrow, as it very slowly drifts to the west in the direction of Jamaica. As of right now, not really seeing a whole lot of impacts to Haiti or the Dominican Republic. There are some outer bands that have made it into southern Haiti, which will continue to dump heavy rainfall, but outside of that, Jamaica is really the area that's going to be hardest hit by this hurricane in only a day or two. And unfortunately, we have a ton of bad news regarding Melissa. It is now forecasted to make a direct landfall as a Category 4, if not a Category 5 hurricane on Monday in Jamaica. So we are expecting that there will be landfall in the country of Jamaica on Monday, which means that catastrophic impacts will likely be felt across much of the country. On top of that, this will be stalling just to the south of Jamaica for the next few days. So as we go into Sunday morning, we are expecting this to very slowly move to the west and essentially dump tons of rain over Jamaica. We are expecting the threat of upwards of 30 to 60 inches of rainfall in Jamaica, which is just absolutely insane. This could be legitimately the worst hurricane we've ever seen for the country of Jamaica. You need to be preparing for worst case scenario in this area, and if you can, get inland. If you're right along the coastline, that is not where you want to be, because that's where all the storm surge is. We're going to have landslides in the higher elevations as well, which could kind of lead to a situation with what the United States saw last year with Helene. So this is obviously not a good situation at all. On top of that, it is expected to be upwards of 160 miles per hour for the sustained winds, with wind gusts up to 200 miles per hour upon making landfall in Jamaica. More bad news. There are now hurricane warnings in effect for Jamaica, which means all the airports in Jamaica are closing. And then as we go into Tuesday, it will continue as a powerful major hurricane over Cuba, and it will still be a hurricane all the way through the Bahamas on Wednesday. There is still a possibility this could take a more westerly path and bring some minor impacts to southeastern Florida, but at this time, the biggest concern is for Jamaica, Cuba, Haiti, and as well as the Bahamas, with the Dominican Republic also seeing some rainfall out of this. And unfortunately, there's really no good news with Hurricane Melissa, because what's going to happen is that we are expecting this to go right through Jamaica sometime on Monday. In the meantime, it's going to stall just to the south, dumping all of that rainfall. But the spaghetti models here do not show hardly any variability at this point. Almost all of them are now locked in on some sort of landfall in Jamaica Monday into Tuesday, and then Wednesday into Thursday, almost all of them are going directly through Cuba and then eventually going directly into the Bahamas. So right now, this is turning into basically worst case scenario for Melissa, and it is going to be a treacherous next few days, especially in Jamaica. Now let's talk more about the timing and the impacts out of Hurricane Melissa, beginning with our future radar. This is what it looks like for the next few days. A very intense and powerful hurricane is going to smash into Jamaica as we go into Sunday and Monday. But in the meantime, it will be stalling just to the southeast of Jamaica as we go into Sunday afternoon. This particular hurricane model does keep it south southeast of Jamaica, while a lot of the other models have actually kept it south of Jamaica. It's a big difference because if it goes any further to the west, we are going to likely see that landfall on the western half of Jamaica. However, if it does take the path that this hurricane model is showing, we could see landfall over here in eastern Jamaica, which means that it would have less time to intensify, but would still bring major impacts just to a different side of the country. By Sunday evening, this is just to the southeast of Jamaica as an intense Category 4 hurricane, and then it'll try to make a run at becoming a Category 5 hurricane as we go into Monday morning and afternoon. Notice how it drops down to 924 millibars of pressure. Our eye wall is going to be all around the southeast side of Jamaica, and then eventually as we go throughout the evening hours on Sunday, or Monday, excuse me, the worst of the impacts are going to be felt across eastern Jamaica with substantial winds. We're likely talking Category 4 to 5 intensity winds right along the immediate coastline and even some inland areas in either eastern or western Jamaica. And then on top of that, very heavy rainfall, 30 to 40 inches of rain are possible. And then on top of that, we're also talking about substantial storm surge out of this hurricane. So this is a no-winner scenario at this point. However, there is obviously a possibility here that we could see a couple scenarios play out for Jamaica, one of which is it makes landfall in the eastern half of the country. Another one, it could make a landfall in the western half of the country. It could also kind of split the difference here and go between the two. But no matter what happens, we are going to see catastrophic impacts in Jamaica. And then as we go into late Monday and early Tuesday, that is when it'll go right through Jamaica and then eventually track towards Cuba Tuesday afternoon, bring the threat of Category 3 to 4 intensity to eastern Cuba. And then early Wednesday, it'll be moving right through the eastern Bahamas, bringing all sorts of hurricane impacts. And then it's out to sea as we go into Thursday. Also, this is a simulation of our infrared imagery over the next few days to kind of give you an idea of when we're going to probably see an eye of the hurricane. And I think that'll happen as we go into early Sunday. We'll likely have a pretty defined eye just to the southeast of Jamaica by as early as about 9 to 10 o'clock on Sunday. And then eventually as we go into late Sunday and early Monday, that is when it is approaching Jamaica as likely a very powerful Category 4 or 5 hurricane. And then as we go into late Monday and early Tuesday, it continues to lift to the north, going in the direction of Cuba. Now, one of the worst impacts that Melissa is going to bring is the amount of rainfall. And this is the latest European model estimate on in terms of total rainfall that we can see over the next few days. And anywhere in this brown shading is where we're expecting greater than 500 millimeters of rainfall, which is equivalent to 20 inches of rainfall. But there will be plenty of spots that pick up well over that. We will see over 1,000 millimeters of rain, most likely in parts of Jamaica between now all the way through Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And even some of the mountainous regions, including the highest elevations of Jamaica, could get up to 60 inches of rain. If that were to happen, we'd have mudslides absolutely everywhere. It would be a catastrophic situation. So again, please be safe out there. This is not a good situation at all for Jamaica. And back over in Cuba and Haiti, we're also expecting a pretty decent swath here of around 200 to upwards of 500 millimeters of rainfall. So not nearly as significant. There will be some spots though in far southern Haiti that get up to about 1,000 millimeters of rainfall. Now switching gears to the threat of severe weather in the United States over the next couple of days, beginning with today, which is Saturday, and we have a slight risk of severe weather in place from western Mississippi back into southeast Texas, and a marginal threat for parts of Arkansas, even back over towards Dallas, Fort Worth. Greatest concerns for today will be damaging winds. There's also a threat of large to even very large hail. Could have a few supercells later this afternoon that produce hail up to the size of baseballs. So make sure that you are staying away from windows if you're under any sort of severe thunderstorm warning today. And there's also a threat for a few tornadoes. We do have a 5% tornado risk in place from Houston, Texas, back towards New Orleans, and a 2% tornado risk that also encompasses areas from southwestern Mississippi all the way back into central Texas. So stay weather aware, have multiple ways to receive warnings. There is a chance of a live stream later today, so click the bell icon so you're notified if we do go live. And then on Sunday, the threat of severe weather will shift to the Gulf Coast, mainly from Louisiana back into West Florida, where there will be a threat for isolated damaging winds and hail. There's also a possibility, though, for an isolated tornado or two in this region. Now let's talk more about the timing of severe weather. Beginning with today, we'll have a line of thunderstorms continuing into the late morning and early afternoon across parts of Louisiana and southeast Texas. And assuming this clears out fast enough, we'll see another round of storms right behind it as we go into the mid to late afternoon and early evening, primarily across southeast Texas, where there will be a few supercells that'll try to form, probably pretty close to the Gulf Coast, with the biggest concern being damaging winds and very large hail. But I do think a tornado or two are definitely going to be in play with anything that stays discrete, which right now the HRRR is spitting out plenty of discrete supercells from about Houston all the way back through Corpus Christi. And then during the late evening and overnight hours, all these storms will start to push offshore. And that leads into Sunday's risk of severe weather, which will be primarily congealed to just the coastline. I think we'll be watching for mainly an isolated wind threat, maybe a spin-up tornado or two to anywhere from very far southeastern Mississippi all the way back over towards areas like Panama Beach in Florida. And then during the late afternoon and early evening, the storms will continue, but generally speaking, not looking like a very organized threat of severe weather on Sunday. But obviously today does look concerning enough to the point where we will be on standby for a live stream, so make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if we do go live. And then beyond this, the weather looks pretty quiet for most of the lower 48. As we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, we were initially thinking a big storm would produce at least some severe weather around Tuesday. However, it does not appear likely that we're going to see much severe weather out of this next storm system, mainly because of the hurricane and also it just not being as organized of a trough as initially forecasted. Instead, there could be some showers and storms on Wednesday across the Dixie Alley, but severe weather does not appear very likely at this time. And then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, as that hurricane pushes away from the United States, a very strong cold front will push across the southeast, dropping temperatures towards record-breaking low territories. And we're going to have way more details on that in a future video, but we'll talk more about it here in a moment as well. And then by next weekend, things become more uncertain, but we might start to see our first snowfall here pretty soon for parts of the upper Midwest, maybe even the Northeast. So it's not far here from the beginning of winter, only a little over a month out. So these are the temperature trends for the next week or so. We are expecting below average temperatures to continue across the Northeast. And then Tuesday into Wednesday, a big shot of cold air will move its way into the southern plains. And then by Thursday, all that cold air is going to make its way into the southeast, where we could see some record-breaking low temperatures in some spots both Wednesday and Thursday. And then by next weekend, that cold air will start to move back out and warm weather will make a return to the Great Plains. Below average temperatures will likely continue, though, for the entire East Coast. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We'll likely have another video tomorrow talking more about Melissa with any big updates that happen. Additionally, we may have a live stream later today, so make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. We're also considering doing live coverage for Melissa on Monday, so if you're interested in that, let me know down in the comments below. We'll see you guys all again in the next video.